Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey with the Daily Briefing from interest.co.nz. Today we'll look at the latest news of falling house prices and whether it will spark political pressure to do something about the slump in the property market. And we'll look at the chances that the Fed's massive liquidity injection will end this credit crunch. We say there's a risk the Fed is simply pouring petrol on an inflationary fire. But firstly, we look at house prices. The most comprehensive and up-to-date bunch of figures came out yesterday afternoon from the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand. And the news isn't good for anyone who bought in the last year or so expecting capital gains, or who has perhaps borrowed up to 100% to do it. You're probably already in negative equity. The median house price fell 0.7% in February and is now down 4.2% from the peak in November last year. The Reserve Bank's prediction of a 5% fall in prices this year has already almost been achieved, and it's only February. There were big price falls in Northland, Auckland, Southland, the Manawatu and Taranaki, although prices did rise in Wellington, Christchurch, Nelson and Hamilton. REINZ President Murray Cleland hasn't quite given up on the idea that prices might not fall in a major way. He pointed out the prices haven't quite fallen from a year ago. But he is warning that if prices do tip over and fall on an annual basis, then there could be political and economic fallout. This is an interesting development. When real estate agents start screaming, then the political pressure to intervene will inevitably follow. It will be tough for the government to do anything useful. About the only thing that might work is a significant increase in migration. But that has its own political sensitivities in an election year. Unless, of course, Helen Clark wants to throw Winston Peters some raw meat to chew on. I know that's quite a picture, but it's not out of the question. Now for a deeper look at the US Federal Reserve's move this week to pump more than $200 billion into global financial markets. Initially, investors were over the moon. They thought maybe this would be enough to calm down this credit market turmoil that's driven interest rates up all around the world. Now some are having second thoughts. The words Band-Aid has been used a lot to describe the actions of the Fed, and even the word desperate. They are both good words to use. The Fed under Ben Bernanke is making the same mistake that Alan Greenspan made after 9/11. It believes wrongly, I think, that the best solution to financial market turmoil and an economic slowdown is to throw cash at the problem by easing monetary policy and pumping liquidity into the market. Greenspan did it just after 9/11 when he kept rates at 2% for nearly 2 years. This became known as the Greenspan Put. Essentially, whenever the market got into trouble, then Greenspan and the Fed would bail out the market. It didn't matter how crazy your lending was or how stupid your investment decisions were, because it didn't matter. The Fed would always bail you out with the Greenspan Put. That is happening all over again, and the pain will eventually be shared by all of us in the form of higher inflation and higher interest rates. We are already seeing it with higher oil prices and higher food prices. Inflation is a monetary phenomenon. It gets worse when central banks throw money into the fire. It simply stokes the flames. The Reserve Bank here in New Zealand is right to keep rates on hold. A central bank's ultimate job is to contain inflation and let an economy grow without that fear. The last time central banks and governments thought inflation and budget deficits didn't matter was in the late 1960s and early 1970s. That resulted in a decade of high oil prices, high unemployment and stagflation. We're all now paying for the profligacy of Alan Greenspan, his successor Ben Bernanke, and George Bush's Iraq war spending. We're paying for it with inflation and higher interest rates. I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz with the Daily Briefing. Catch you on Friday.